Where to live in Kansas City. In this video, we're to break down all the different Kansas City suburbs on the Kansas side and the Missouri side and rank them in three different categories. The established suburbs, where what you see is what you're going to get. There's not a ton of development happening and they're a very safe bet. Second, we're going to break down the emerging suburbs that are growing really quickly, that are kind of predictable, but where you'll notice a couple changes and a little bit of new construction throughout. Then finally, the third category, the rising stars, the ones that are up and coming, that if you moved away and moved back after about 5 to 10 years, it would be a night and day difference because of how rapidly the cities are progressing. As we go through each different section of the video, we'll break down the pros and cons, and I'll list the different suburbs that fit into each different category. Now, before we get started with the first part of the video, I just want to give you a little bit of context so you know what the goal of the video is. So almost every single week, I've been fortunate enough to hear from one of you, whether phone call, email, text message, who are moving to the Kansas City area. And almost always, probably the reason you're watching this video, you're doing some research beforehand. You've got a couple suburbs in mind that you're thinking of moving to. Maybe the ratings are good, the school districts are good, you like the home prices, whatever that might look like. But more often than not, when a lot of my clients are moving to Kansas City, we start looking at homes. Oftentimes there are other suburbs that pop up along the way that sort of make even more sense than the ones that you might have seen online. Maybe these are suburbs that nobody's talking about or just don't get as much press, or once you step foot, it's just got that feeling like it is and it feels like your new home. So the goal of this video is to hopefully shine the floodlights on some of those suburbs that don't get as much recognition but certainly deserve it. And final thing before we get started is I'm inevitably going to miss a couple that maybe you think should make it. So leave a comment down below if I do miss anything, and we'll make a totally separate updated video to account for all of those. Without further ado, we're going to get started with the first part of the video, which are the established suburbs in Kansas City. Now, one of the biggest advantages of living in an established part of the Kansas City metro is being centrally located, being close to pretty much anywhere that you could possibly want to go in the metro area, being like 30 minutes or less away from the airport, parts of downtown Kansas City, maybe out south in Overland Park, Olathe, Kansas, whatever that might look like. Being centrally located is something very highly sought after. And as a result of that, a lot of these areas that we're going to talk about in this part of the video, the land value is just that much higher than some of the newer parts of the city. And just before we get into this, here's a map of the entire Kansas City metro area. It breaks down the parts of town based on the age of homes and when they were built. So everything that you see closer to the center point of the city, those are some older homes in the reds, the oranges, the yellows, and the farther outside of that area, the newer the development gets. And we'll discuss those as we make our way to the second and third parts of this video. But first and foremost, these established neighborhoods in Kansas City, many of them fall in the Country Club District, which was developed between the 1900s and the 1950s by J.C. Nichols. You can just feel the history as you're walking through some of these neighborhoods. Some of them are a little bit more walkable. Some of them are right around the Country Club Plaza. But really, you've got neighborhoods, cities, suburbs on both sides of state line. It's actually the biggest master plan community in the entire country, even to this day. And what you can expect is mature landscaping, majestic trees that are lining the streets, and anywhere from smaller lots with more vertically built homes to just sprawling estates like you would see in Old Leawood or Mission Hills or the Ward Parkway estates. So some of the neighborhoods that come to mind, at least in Kansas City, Missouri, on the Missouri side, are West Plaza. That area is seeing a lot of development, but when we're talking about development in an established area, it's not widespread change. It's one small part of the neighborhood, one small part of the city at a time. And when we see that in the West Plaza, typically a lot of those lots are smaller. New construction homes, when they're being built, are being built vertically because they don't have the space to build horizontally. You've got other areas like Waldo, which has really been growing very popular over the last couple of years. Brookside, which is just beautiful. You've got the Brookside shops there as well. You've got Ward Parkway, the Ward Parkway estates. And of course, you've got several different neighborhoods up and down Kansas City, Missouri. But those are some of the most popular ones that I hear from a lot of you who are thinking about moving to the Kansas City area. And of course, on the Kansas side, in the Country Club District, you've got Westwood Hills, which has some of the most beautiful architecture, a lot of Tudor style homes. And again, similar redevelopment, tear down, new construction like you would see in the West Plaza, just minutes across from state line. You've also got Fairway, which has larger lot sizes depending on what part of Fairway we're talking about, with more expensive home prices, especially as you get closer to Mission Hills, which houses some of the most expensive prices in the entire Kansas City metro. And I would even go as far to throw some parts of Mission, Roland Park, and even North Overland Park into that established part of the Kansas City metro list. Now, some of the cons of living in an established neighborhood is you're paying a little bit of a premium just because you're centrally located, the land value is more expensive, as well as the cost of building a brand new home is that much more because you've got to buy a home, the structure on it, and the piece of land, tear down that property, and then build a brand new home on top of it. And typically, depending on what part of town we're talking about, those are starting at the 7 figures and often go into the multiple 7 figures, depending on the city that you're looking at. Another con is that there are fewer exciting changes to see, but when they do happen, they certainly make the news. They're the talk of the town. Everybody knows about them. And of course, some of the pros we've discussed, you've got the mature landscaping, you're centrally located, sometimes you're in a more walkable part of town, you're closer to the amenities that make Kansas City historic and popular and places that everybody wants to go. And of course, you've got less construction that you have to worry about on a day-to-day basis. Now, before we get to the second part of the video, if we haven't met yet, then welcome to the channel. My name's Nick Massa. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in Kansas and Missouri. And if you're on the fence, if you're moving to Kansas City, you know you're going to buy a home, you're just trying to find the perfect neighborhood for you, whether it's the good schools that you're looking for, whether it's privacy, you're looking for more of a small town feel, whatever that looks like for you, we would absolutely love to support you. And sometimes it's as simple as one quick phone call to really get a little bit more clarity on some of the areas that would check a lot of those boxes versus some of the areas that wouldn't. And sometimes it takes being here, stepping foot in here, and really walking through some of these neighborhoods to find that answer. Either way, we'd absolutely love to support you. We're only a phone call, text message, and email away. And if you reach out, we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation about what you're looking for. Really, we'll put everything we talk about in this video to use and more specific to you. So with all that said, feel free to reach out. We're going to move on to part number 2 of the video, which is all about the emerging suburbs in Kansas City. These are the parts of town that are kind of like Goldilocks between the established neighborhoods that we just discussed and the rising stars, the up-and-comers that we'll get to here in the third part of the video. These are where you'll see a little bit faster appreciation. You'll see some of those changes, so it's not same old, same old. There are exciting new developments happening, and whether you're looking for some new construction or you're looking to be in a more established part of some of these suburbs, you've got the best of both worlds. And if we take another look at that map that shows the age of homes in the city, what we're talking about with the emerging cities are typically where the red, yellow, orange, where those older homes meet the newer homes. So kind of the outer ring of that Kansas City metro area. So we're not as centrally located as we would be in some of those established neighborhoods, but we get the benefit of having a more suburban, less populated feel. And typically we're a little bit more spread out depending on the area we're talking about. So if we start on the Missouri side, I have to say almost everything north of the river is absolutely exploding. And my theory behind this is that Johnson County is by far one of the most popular counties you could live in the entire United States, in the entire country. So when a lot of people are deciding where to live, Johnson County is one that catches everybody's eye. It's on the Kansas side. A lot of the places we're about to discuss, they fall in Johnson County, but it does have prices that are a little bit more expensive, which causes a lot of people to look at a couple different options. And if you're looking for a more spread out, more suburban type of lifestyle, that's exactly what you'll find north of the river in several different areas. The first one is in Kansas City, Missouri, which encompasses most of that land north of the river. In 2023, most of the new build permits, the new construction permits, were pulled in that part of the city. I would also throw North Kansas City in there, which is distinct from Kansas City, Missouri. It's its own separate city, has a little bit more industrial feel. It's got a lot of changes that we're seeing that just got a chicken and pickle, for example. I would even throw Platte City, which is near the airport. It has some of the older homes that you would have seen on that map showing the age of homes. I would certainly throw Parkville, which is absolutely serene and beautiful. There's so much green space around. Liberty has been absolutely exploding because of the school district is very highly rated. You've got Gladstone that I'd throw in there as well, which has a little bit more of an established feel, but also has a good amount of development coming. And then if you look south of the river on the Missouri side, you've got two that stand out. One has to be Independence, where you will see some of those older homes, but I think it's far enough outside of the more established, more principal area of Kansas City to where you will see a little bit of new development here and there. But by far and beyond, Lee Summit has to be one of the most popular emerging cities on the Missouri side. You've got phenomenal school districts. You've still got a very small town feel, a lot of development happening, where you also have that, the Goldilocks of the downtown area, which is historic. It does have that established feel, and it's absolutely beautiful, and there's so much to do there. And if you look at the Kansas side, you've got an extensive list there as well. So Kansas City, Kansas, which falls outside of Johnson County, north of Johnson County, you've got the West Village area, which is just absolutely exploding. Piper and the Piper School District there is growing really quickly. In Johnson County, you've got Lenexa, you've got the city of Olathe. It is growing very, very quickly, and almost outpacing the growth of Overland Park. I would throw Central and South Overland Park in this mix as well. You've got Leawood, which is part of the Country Club District, but South Leawood, which is south of 435, has just been growing and growing and growing. And you have several new developments coming to South Leawood along 135th Street. You've got Western Shawnee, which has some new home communities being built there. And really, this list could go on and on and on, but those are just some of the ones that come to mind. Now, a couple of the pros are these are a pretty safe bet. They're proven. It's not like you're putting money in the ground where we're not sure if it will continue to appreciate. We know that these are parts of town that are
high demand, and if you move into one of these parts of town, typically you're going to get the benefit of faster appreciation. You do have the choice of being able to choose between new construction or an established part of town with a more historic neighborhood, and you've constantly got new exciting changes and things happening around town. Now, some of the cons include you've got more new construction that you've got to deal with. Maybe that's noise as you're working home in a home office and you've got a home being built right next door. Another con is change can be stressful and maybe the locals don't like it, but that's certainly a con that will apply far more to some of the rising stars we'll discuss in the next part of the video. The last thing that I want to say is that if you're looking for something in between where you don't want a ton of really quick, rapid change, but you do want the best of both worlds, one of the emerging cities might just be the one for you. Now, if any of those are calling your name, or if I glossed over any that you certainly think should have made the list for either the established or the emerging part of the video, make sure to leave a comment down below and we'll make sure to update this video, make a sequel to it, and cover those in the future. We're going to move on to the third part of the video, which are the rising stars. These are the parts of town that are up and coming, where if you want to be at the ground floor, you want to get some of the lower prices and have your shot at getting really quick appreciation as these cities start to take off and more people live there, these might be the ones for you. Here's that map that we discussed at the beginning of the video. Everything you see in green, these are most of the time, these are going to fall in that rising star category where there's a lot of new development. Maybe it was farm town, maybe there's a lot of small town feel. For the most part, you've got exciting changes that are happening pretty much every single year. So if you look at the Missouri side, typically what we're seeing north of the river, Missouri right now is you've got a lot of that land, which is Kansas City, Missouri. There are some different school districts that fall into that land. And for whatever reason, the prices are increasing very quickly, largely probably because of the new construction there. Maybe people don't like it. Maybe they don't want it to be as congested. So they're starting to move a little bit farther north. So some of the areas that are taking off are like Smithville. There's a lot of new construction, a lot of development happening there. Smithville Lake is absolutely beautiful. You've got Kearney, same kind of situation. It's growing rapidly. A lot of new construction. I've had people reach out who that's one of the cities that they're looking for. Again, a little bit more small town feel. You've got south of the river, Blue Springs is one that's just north of Lee Summit. I expect that as Lee Summit continues to grow and grow and grow, typically, which is very similar to a lot of the other ones on this list, a lot of that growth will spill into those surrounding areas. And Blue Springs happens to be one where I know a lot of people would really like to see a little bit more to do in the city, a little bit more shops, restaurants, entertainment. Otherwise, they kind of have to go into Lee Summit or go into Independence. And that's one of the major benefits of these areas is that they're going to be growing quickly. And we know that retail follows residential. A couple other ones that we can include on this list are Great Valley, Pleasant Hill, which are just a little bit farther outside of Lee Summit and the more central, the more densely populated areas around Kansas City, Missouri. Now, on the Kansas side, if you look at Basehor, Kansas, which is growing, and largely because you've got a lot of growth in Piper, the West Village area in Kansas City, Kansas. You've also got Lansing, which is popular. You got Fort Leavenworth there, a lot of military relocating in and out of that area. If you go into Johnson County, you've got places like Spring Hill, which have just absolutely exploded, where you've got lower home prices, but you're also very close to Overland Park and the rest of South Johnson County, which is one of the really popular reasons people are moving there. You've got Garter, Kansas, which I expect to just explode over the next couple of years, similar to Spring Hill, except it's got lower property taxes. And we covered one of the new home communities there called Prairie Trace that I'll leave linked down below in the description of this video in case you want to check it out. You've also got places like the DeSoto, which the Panasonic battery plant is going to bring tons and tons of jobs to the area. It's currently being developed and believe it'll open sometime in 2026 or around there. You've got just to the south of Overland Park, you've got the Stillwell area, which is an unincorporated community. There's so much land out there that does fall in the Blue Valley School District. There's much lower density there than what you would see in Overland Park. And as a result, those are a lot of the cities that I believe are like a ground floor investment where you're going to see appreciation happen pretty quickly, just as more and more people choose to move to Kansas City, and you'll see some changes over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, some of the cons of moving to these areas is that while you do get those lower prices, you might have to wait a little bit for retail to eventually catch up. And those like shops, restaurants, entertainment places to pop up around town. Another con is that you're a little bit farther outside of everything, which I believe if you're moving to one of these areas is the point. You want to be a little bit farther outside because you've got a little bit more of that small town feel. It's not as congested. Maybe you've got more privacy. Maybe you're after more land. Those are just some of the major benefits. And then the final one is maybe the locals don't want to see that change. I know for a fact places like Stillwell have pushed back against some of the new development. And that's part of what you'll see in a very quickly changing area where people live their whole lives undisturbed. And all of a sudden, a ton of homes start going up, a ton of development happens. There's always going to be some pushback and some resistance. So that's all I got for this video. Any questions about anything that we covered, make sure to reach out. We'd absolutely love to support you in buying or building a new home in the Kansas City suburbs, whether it's an established area of town, an emerging area of town, or one of the rising stars, the up and comers. Make sure to reach out. We can make all of this information specific to you in as quick as a phone call, text message, or email. We absolutely love to hear from you. We're never too busy to take your call. So with that being said, there's a link down in the description to many of the different suburbs that we talked about. I've got independent videos that break down all of them. In the meantime, feel free to click right here, which is a playlist full of all of our different videos covering the Kansas City suburbs. If you are into new construction, I'm going to leave a link to a playlist right here. All of our videos about different new home communities around town. So click either here or here, and I'll see you on the other side.